Hey everyone, welcome to Quasi Hobbies. This is the first video of a series that I have planned. In this series, I would like to talk about different fishing lures, when and where to use them, and different color patterns and stuff like that. Today we're talking about just a basic jig. This jig in particular, it's black and blue with blue fleck, and it's just your basic jig, so let's get into it. I personally just suck at fishing jigs. Every so often, I'll manage to catch a fish with one, but it's not really a lot. But so many of my friends and pros swear by them. Why is that? Well, to answer that question, let's start with talking about where they're best used. Like many other lures, jigs are mainly fished around cover, things like rock piles, grass beds, wood, piers, you name it. This is partly why the jig is so versatile. It can be fished in all of these situations because of the forage it mimics. In case you're new to fishing or new to lures, lures themselves are just artificial representations of what a fish eats daily. Jigs like this one represent crayfish, or you might call them crawdads. For now, I'll just call them crayfish, but these little crustaceans are one of bass's main forage items. They're also commonly found by cover, like I mentioned earlier, and that is why the jig is so effective in those locations. With that being said, now that you know where to use a jig, let's talk about what color pattern to use. Depending on geographic location, direct species, and when they last molted, they can be different colors. So your goal should be to match color as close as possible, right? Well, that also depends. In clear water, you should always try and match the natural color of the forage that you're imitating. Sometimes if you look around, you can maybe find some shells or look under a rock and find the crayfish that you're trying to mimic. And if you can't match the hatch, as they say, you just gotta make an educated guess on the color of the water you're fishing. In clear water, natural will always be the best. That'll be your watermelon green, browns, and some mustard colors. The reason being that if you can see the fish, they can see you too. Fish have decent eyesight and will be able to tell if a bait doesn't look right. Visibility is at its peak, and this is the fish's advantage, not yours. You'll have to make longer casts and try and stay out of their line of sight. Clear water isn't exactly my favorite to fish in, but it's fun and can be challenging. Stained water, however, is my favorite water to fish. I'm surrounded by stained water in my area, and I grew up fishing in it. Stained is a pretty broad description though, because it's more of a spectrum. But just imagine the dead middle of that spectrum, and that is the stain that I'm referring to. In stained water, visibility really isn't the greatest, so you'll be able to get away with using more off and unnatural colors. I use some brighter and darker colors, but you might ask, which do I normally choose between the two? Typically it just depends on the day's weather. On clear sunny days, I tend to use darker colors with faster movement to provoke reaction bites. The fish can just barely see my lure, so it quickly reacts. On darker cloudy days, I use bright colors to capitalize on what little sunlight does get through. It is likely that a fish will check out one of the only shiny things that it sees. And, on cloudy days, that might not be much. And now this might seem backwards for some, however, this is just my strategy and it works in my specific area. But you should experiment yourself and find what works for you and what works in your area. For my least favorite though, good old muddy chocolate milk. I absolutely hate fishing with lures in muddy water. I struggle with finding fish, attracting bites, and I just suck at it. I have a friend that only fishes muddy water though, and does great. That's just not me. When I do fish in mud, the only viable colors are extremely bright and extremely dark. Stuff like silver, black, chartreuse, but that's where I draw the line. If I fish in muddy water, it's typically for carp and catfish, stuff where I don't use lures. And that is pretty much it. Seems that I kinda went off on a tangent with too much advice, especially for only jigs, considering you're likely only going to use black and blue or watermelon green. Essentially, though, you're just going to use the watermelon green in clear and lightly stained water, and you're going to use black and blue for anything darker than that. That's pretty easy to remember, right? When it comes to how to fish a jig, it's pretty deadly. That's awesome considering how simple it is. It's mostly just a bounce of a rod tip or a smooth, simple drag across the bottom. Once you find out what motion the fish want, all you have to do is dial in the pace, how often you give it a bounce, how fast you sweep your rod, and if that doesn't work, then try finding a cadence. Kind of like a rhythm, a hop hop drag here or hop skip hop there. Trying a new cadence can entice pretty finicky fish. That's pretty simple, right? It's basically why everyone loves fishing a jig. Just not me, because I'm bad. Unlike this video, the jig is the sweet, simple, and to the point lure of the fishing industry. And with that, we've reached the end of this video. I hope you were able to learn something. If you were more experienced, please be sure to add something to the video by commenting below. And thanks for watching.